that does it for the remains of the old frame. I was tired of it sitting on the gravel pit and I wanted it gone. So I cut out what I wanted and the rest of it is going into the recycling bin. I plan on reusing the gasoline bracket on the new frame, and the rest of the pieces that I cut out are just used to take measurements off of for when I build the new frame. And if you're still wondering why I cut my frame in half, all this rust that's on the floor and on the table used to be part of the frame, and all the holes that are in the frame pieces, I mean, this wouldn't last much longer if I didn't do anything about it. And now it's dust. So it's going in the trash can and the recycling bin, and a new frame is being created. Continuing on, we are going to finish welding up the frame jig, and then we are going to start cutting the first pieces of the frame. And I'm going to show you how I plan on splicing the new frame to the old frame. So let's get into that. The frame jig is fully welded, and I've gone ahead and cut a couple of the pieces of the new frame. I have the two pieces back here that go up and over the axle, and I have the two joints that I plan on using to splice the old frame to the new frame. The largest problem that these truck frames have is that moisture and debris can build up on the frame that goes up and over the axle. And when that happens, it starts rusting from the inside, and then 20 years later, you suddenly have a hole, and then you don't have a frame anymore, and your truck folds in half. So to be able to mitigate against that happening again in the future, I've come up with a double bottom wall system that should allow water to drain out of the frame quite easily, and if you need to clean the inside, an easier place to get in to clean that debris out. So the first thing I've done is I've created a offset about 4 inches between the two horizontal cuts. That means that an entire section isn't fully welded through, and that relieves a lot of stress on that weld. To join the middle of the two, I've gone along the middle of the top, and then I've cut the bottom completely off, and I've welded in half of a 1 3/4 inch tube. This is 8 inches long, and it goes past the joint all the way on one side and then lines up with the joint on the other side. Thinking about it now, I probably should have gone 2 inches on this side and then 2 inches on this side so that I don't have any two joints that are fully aligned with each other, but this will be fine. What this bottom tube allows is to have large openings inside the frame so that water can easily get out. With a little imagination, we can pretend that this is fully welded together. So you'll have your seam along here, along the top, comes back, goes along the bottom, and then on the outside, which would be this on the opposite side, is welded to the existing frame. That'll give me a nice strong joint, but this isn't the only thing I'm gonna do. From here, I plan on welding some diamond-shaped plates on the inside and outside. That way I can change this pure tension weld joint into a couple shear weld joints, which will add a lot of strength to the side. And then the last thing I plan on doing on the bottom to add a lot of strength is to run an 1/8 inch strip that goes the full width, which is about 2 inches, along 2 inches past the front, which is like right about here, along the entire 8-inch tube, past the 8-inch tube, and then 5 or 6 inches up the angled part. And then in that strapping, I'm gonna cut an oval, which will be about 1 inch wide. So we'll have 1/2 inch sides and then about 3 inches long. And that'll be a nice large opening for debris to get out. Now you're saying to yourself, that's probably an easy way for debris to get in, which is true, but I want it to be able to get in and out easily. You can stick a hose up here and spray water through, really liquefy any mud that's inside the frame, and then just have it drain out. Before we can fully tack and weld in the splice, we need to finish prepping the inside of the frame. So we're gonna switch over to talk about what I've done on the inside of the frame. In dealing with the inside of the frame, I used a 3-step process. The first step was to clean and remove any of the existing rust and debris. The second step was to treat and encapsulate any of the remaining surface rust. And the third step was to coat everything in a rust preventative paint. For step 1, I made a rust brush or a rust whip or a rust spinning thing of death. It's basically 2 pieces of chain that I welded to a 3/16 inch rod, slid that into a 1/2 inch tube, and then connected the rod to a drill. Stuck it in the frame, pulled the trigger, and held on tight. I used my endoscope to get before and after of this process, and you can see the huge difference between the two. Before, you can see lots of rust on the sides and a lot of flake on the bottom, and that has all been removed. You can also see that the rust is much more metallic looking and not red, and that's where the chain has beaten down the rust and gotten back down to bare metal. The second step, I used Total Boat's Rust Primer. This stuff is very watery and is very caustic, and because of that, I didn't want to use any equipment that I already had. So I bought myself one of these little pressurized tanks that you can put chemicals in, and then I attached a piece of copper tubing to that, and then on the end of the copper tubing, I stuck on a 3D printed nozzle I designed. And you can see the difference between the chain whip endoscope and the post-rust primer endoscope, that there is a huge difference. The bottom is completely black with encapsulated rust, and the sides have a pretty deep black color. I actually went and did this again, and the second time I looked at it, it looks much better. So I'm very confident that the rust is taken care of on the inside of these 2 sections. The third step I have yet to do, because I want to completely weld up the frame, is to use Eastwood's internal frame coating. And the reason I'm waiting is I don't want to burn any of this off and have to deal with trying to remove it or any of the flakes as I weld it all. So I'm going to weld the frame up together, and then I'm going to spray the inside of the old frame and the inside of the new frame with the internal coating. Quick tip that I'm going to try on this one is I've actually taped the tube with the nozzle onto a piece of welding wire, and that gives it a little bit more rigidity as I stick it into the frame to coat it. So when I get to that process, I'll let you know how that actually turned out. And this is actually where I'm going to end the video. In the next video of the series, we will actually be working on the frame itself. I've got everything coded and we're gonna start building the frame members, and I look forward to doing all of that. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you're still enjoying the series. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them in the section below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.